Okay, hello class. I said hello class. Anyway, little pun at the beginning here. Of course, I can't hear you. But let's have some fun with some databases. Um, let's start with the basics. Remember last time we talked about the how things are structured in a database table and how database tables are related to each other and how we might navigate a database table to answer questions. Navigate a database of tables to answer questions. So let's break it down. We're going to now switch gears and we're going to start diagramming databases. So we want to store all the information we're collecting, but we need to store in an organized manner. And in a relational database, there's a certain structure. So let's break it down to our parts here. When we create what we call an entity relationship diagram, I'll put that up here. These are entity relationship diagram. So we'll refer to them as ERD. An entity relationship diagram is just all about diagramming the relationships in a database. Sounds pretty trivial. And there's basically three parts that you're going to want to keep track of. With the diagramming convention that we're going to use, which is called crow's foot, this box here that's now highlighted is a table. The tables represent entities, and the name of the table or the name of the entity is in the top of that box. So student, course are entities, and we're going to store fields or attributes about those entities in columns or fields in each table. So in this case, student has two fields or two attributes: student ID, which is the primary key, and first name. Of course, there's going to be lots of other attributes that we might store under student. Course has two attributes: course ID, which is the primary key, and department. And so we've got up here, we got entity name. Then down here we have field names. And then between tables, we have relationships. And I like to name my relationships just so that I can kind of convert them into English sentences. So a student takes a course. There's a relationship between a student and a course in that a student takes a course. And these we'll get into later. You'll see these little symbols here. This is why they call it the crow's foot methodology. This basically just means that if I have a course, there can be 0, that's what that O means, to many, that's what that crow's foot means, students that can be in that course, that can take that course. If I have a student, there can be 0 or many courses that they take. So a student can take 0 or many courses. And that's how we're going to define the relationship between two entities. So you need to know that database modeling and relational databases are built on set theory. So remember last time we talked about how a course, these attributes would be column headers in a spreadsheet. We'd have a column for course ID, column for department, so on and so forth. All the other attributes that might be listed here would have a column, and then underneath those column headers, we would stick instances of courses. So we expect to have many courses. That's a set of courses we could choose from. And when we pick one record or one row from that course, we then go over and say, if we have this specific course, how many students could take that course? And we'd have a list of students. And vice versa. If I have a student, Matt Pickard, I pick one of the set of students in my student table, and I ask how many courses in my courses table can Matt Pickard be related with in that he takes that course. And of course, I'm pursuing a degree, and so I better be taking probably one course, but if I've just enrolled, I'm allowed to take 0 courses. And a degree is going to require many courses, and so I'd want that many on there. So we're just making statements about relationships between members of the set in each of the tables. So, still building on relationships, what you see here, this is we got to keep relationships and cardinality straight. Every relationship, this takes relationship, has two cardinalities. There's one, it's 0 to many. Here's another one, it's 0 to many. So there's two cardinalities which make a statement that a student can take 0 to many courses. A course can have 0 to many students take it or enrolled in it. And when I've got a 0 to many on both sides, we call that a many to many relationship. So one of these can be associated with many of those, and one student can be associated with many courses. That's a many to many relationship. Likewise, let's move down here. Say we have an owner in a car. An owner owns 0 to many cars, and maybe we could call this a person. Might be better. So a person doesn't have to own a car. We allow for that right here. But a person could own many cars, and we allow that for that little crow's foot, which symbolizes many. And a car with a specific VIN, that's a primary key, is owned by one and only one person. See that vertical slash? That's one at a minimum and one at a maximum person. Now, of course, you could have a car that's in married couples' names, like they could be co-owners, but we don't represent that here. And if that was the case, it'd be one to many. We'd have the crow's foot here. But here we're saying that a car can only be owned by one and only one person. That also means that if we have a car, there has to be some owner. We're putting that constraint here too. You could make the case where if we have a car, it doesn't have to be owned by anyone, in which case it would look like that. So then this car could be owned by 0 to 1 people. Either way, whether it's like this or if it's one and only one, we have one here and we have many there. And so that gives us a one to many relationship. When we're labeling our cardinalities, or when we're labeling our relationships, we look at our maximum cardinality. The maximum cardinality is going to be on the outer edge. So the max is many here. The min is 0 here. The max is many over here, and the max is 1 over here. It's that slash right there. And the min is 1. So on the outside we have 1 and we have many. That's how we get our one to many relationship. And then of course if we come down here, we have students and textbooks. So a student owns one. A student can own one and only one textbook, and a textbook is owned by one and only one student. Now, that obviously probably doesn't hold in real life. A student's going to own many. So I kind of messed up this example. We can think of a better one. But here we're saying that if we have a student, they only can have one textbook. They have to have a textbook. That's the minimum. And they can only have one textbook. That's the max. And if we have a textbook, it has to be owned by some student. And it can only be owned by one student. And so on the outside, we have 1 and 1. And that would give us a one-to-one relationship. So again, to be clear, this is a 0 to many cardinality. On the other side, there's a 0 to many cardinality, but together they form a many to many relationship. This is a 0 to many cardinality. This is a 1 to 1 cardinality, but together they form a 1 to many relationship. And we could have a one to many relationship going the other way. This could be mirrored. So if let's just flip these. So if we go like this and go 1 to 1 and 0 to many, I just flip the sides that those are on. That's still a one to many relationship. And just to drive home the point, if we go like this, and I change it from 1 to 1 and change it to 0 to 1, that's still a one to many relationship. Notice the difference. I went from 1 and only 1 to 0 to 1, but this is still a one to many relationship. And then down here, we have a 1 to 1 cardinality and a 1 to 1 cardinality, and this is a 1 to 1 relationship. Likewise, we could do this. We could go say, on one side, it's 1 and only 1. On the other side, it's 0 to 1. But it's still a 1 to 1 relationship. All right, so those are the basics of entity relationship diagrams. Now, you're going to see different ways to diagram these. And some of these solutions have two different methodologies. And I don't want you to be confused by them. I hope that seeing it a different way kind of helps drive things home. So we're familiar with the crow's foot. This is a many-to-many relationship. If we use the Chen methodology, which I've used in the past, but I've switched over to the crow's foot because your book uses it. Here are the parts of a Chen ERD. You have a table. Notice we just create a box, and that's what represents the table or the entity. This is an entity. Our entity in crow's foot is up here. But then our attributes from crow's foot get stuck. Oh, I think I used the wrong ones here. Hold on one second. Now you'll actually be able to see. It actually needs to be like this. Circles are attributes. It's been a while, I'm rusty. So this would be a student ID. So that's an attribute. And in Chen's methodology, we'll underline the primary keys. Up here we have a column that we can indicate a primary key. So first name would be another column or another attribute of student. And both of these would get converted to columns in a table. So of course over here, there used to be a way that I could replace these. It's not giving me that. Let's replace those. We have the primary key of courses is course ID, and so I'm going to underline that. And then a non-key attribute, because there could be many, is department. And so these are the attributes. So don't get confused here. This is saying the same thing. See, this is equal to this. These are attributes, those are attributes. These are attributes, those are attributes. These are entities. The entity is in the top of the table up here. Relationship, called takes. The relationship in Chen is indicated by a diamond, which don't you think is appropriate? Because girls love diamonds when they enter into relationships. But then notice here, our cardinality here on the left side is 0 to many. Our cardinality on the right side is 0 to many. So in other words, that says if I take one student and then you jump the relationship, then there's 0 to many courses that student takes. If I take one course, and each course has a course ID, a department, so on and so forth, this is like a record. If I take one of these records in this table and jump here, I can see that a course can be taken by 0 to many students. It's the same thing. There's our 0 to many cardinality. 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 There's a minimum and a maximum. There's a minimum and a maximum. We just happen to put them in square brackets in the Chen diagram. But we're going to be using the crow's foot methodology in class. That's how you're going to diagram everything. And you'll be using Lucidchart. This is what you're seeing to diagram these. So that's a brief introduction to the parts of an entity relationship diagram.